Good morning, everybody. This is Lance Maurer, CEO and founder of Cinnafilm. With me today is Ernie Sanchez, our COO and head of product. And we're excited to bring a new webinar to you called High Quality Media Conversions in the Cloud. And we'll be talking about PixelStrings, our new platform as a service, and give you sort of the basics of how it operates and what you can use it for. Okay? Before we get started, I just want to tell everybody, I hope you're all staying safe in these challenging times, and our best to all of you. Okay. A little introduction about us, if you're not familiar with us. Cinnafilm is a broadcast and cinema engineering company. We focus on image processing software. You might be familiar with some of our products that are already out there: Tachyon, Dark Energy, Wormhole, our new Xenon, our Radiant Grid transcoder. These are image processing solutions that we provide to the professional market to do some very high-end and complex media conversions. And for 10 years now, we've been selling this software into the enterprise space. We started in cinema and migrated into broadcast and developed a variety of plugins for enterprise transcoders. And in recent years, we've been focusing the solution set on streaming and home theater. So we have a nice variety of experience over the years that we want to pack into this tool set for your benefits. Today, we'll be talking about what PixelStrings is and what it can do, how it works, and what's included in the system. Ernie will walk us through a quick start and setting up the system and connecting your storage, and then he'll walk you through a typical workflow, how you build it in PixelStrings, and running a job using Tachyon. I'll be talking a little bit about budgetary thoughts and strategies. I'll talk about test mode and other tips that you can use to get the most out of the tool set. And then I'll talk a little bit about the upcoming Skywalker audio toolset that we're bringing to the platform early this summer. Then we'll close out with some final comments and open the field up to any questions you may have, and we'll just go to the end of the hour. All right, let's talk about what PixelStrings is and what it can do. Well, basically, it's everything that we do. It's Tachyon, Dark Energy, Wormhole, Xenon, Radiant Grid transcoder. And we built this out as a platform so that we could add other best-of-breed technologies like the Skywalker audio toolset, Cinecert's Anini. We've got the Technicolor tone mapping solution, and many others that are going to be coming down the pipeline here. PixelStrings is a high-quality media conversion platform as a service. It operates both on-prem and in the cloud. The goal here being to mirror the functionality in both locations. So if you build out a workflow that you like on-prem, you can push it to the cloud with confidence and get the exact same picture and sound output. Now, not everything is going to be identical on-prem as it is in the cloud, because in the cloud, there's going to be some microservices that are starting to come online that may not be available on-prem. But by and large, as far as the core functionality of media conversion, transcode, and image processing, it's one for one. And in the cloud, what we've done is we've added a back end that auto scales itself to meet demand. So we've got access in each of the regions to hundreds, if not thousands, of CPUs and GPUs at our disposal. And because of that compute power, this thing is designed to really scale as fast as it needs to scale to meet all the demand we throw at it. It currently operates in AWS and connects to your S3 storage. That's the primary configuration, but we do also have the ability to onboard enterprise customers in the Azure system, if that's your cloud of choice. The big thing about PixelStrings, it's a very big, complex machine. It's got a lot of moving parts. It's got a lot of software. It's got a lot of CPU, a lot of GPU. But the main thing is it's a balanced ecosystem. And after doing this for 10 years now, one thing that has always been challenging when you're in the enterprise software space is having control over the hardware configurations at the endpoint. Certainly we make recommendations and by and large folks follow that, but the nice thing about the cloud is that we get to pick the configuration, we manage the drivers, we test it out, and we don't leave any cycles on the table, because compute cycles are expensive if you leave them if you don't do it properly, right? So we try to make the machine as efficient as possible to handle all the transcode, all the image processing, all the audio processing, and all the third-party tools that you might need. So if you don't need the Cinecert Anini, that machine doesn't fire up. It basically fires up anything that you ask it to do. okay? The focus of PixelStrings is to provide the highest quality output that ensures the very best possible visual and audio experience by the viewers. I mean, that's been our passion since day one, and I think we've got a solid reputation for picture quality. We've grown into the transcoding space over the last 10 years as we've experienced broadcast and now streaming. And with audio, it's something that we want the whole package. We want this to look and sound as good as possible. And that is why we're out there adding all these best of breed technologies. PixelStrings is designed to handle about, let's say, 90 to about 95% of the professional formats for the broadcast and streaming space. We're not going to try to do 100% of it. There are just some arcane codecs and things that are out there that, if we tried to do everything for everybody, we'd probably put ourselves out of business, frankly. So we're going to try to lock it down to a core group of codecs that are used for modern deliverables. We definitely want to be forward thinking, but we don't want to be too forward thinking. We want to be able to let you put this to use today. For example, the IMF that we've done with Cinnafilm. I call it a simplified IMF, and there's a white paper on the support page that talks about it that John wrote. But the IMF is designed to be very straightforward and get your content seen, like right now. It's designed to meet the minimum requirements and then some to get your content into places that require IMF. But IMF is, as you may know, is a very large, it's a big specification. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and we're not going to try to do all of those things. But certainly, as the industry sort of adopts IMF more and more and requires more and more of those components to be standardized, certainly we'll grow with that. And that's one of the reasons we teamed up with Cinnafilm, because they're experts in the topic, right? So PixelStrings is also API. I mean, the big power of PixelStrings is that it's a big API-driven machine. The GUI that we have in the app, and that's what Ernie will demo here in a few minutes, the GUI is designed so that you can go up and you can use the API. You don't have to worry about integrating it. But if you are someone that's building out your own ecosystem, certainly the API is available. And so if you want to connect a MAM or a workflow engine to it, it's designed for that. How does it work? Excuse me. So PixelStrings is designed to convert, fix, and normalize content at all places in the media supply chain. So if you have a shot that comes in that needs to be fixed, you can do it there. If you're shooting a large sporting venue and all the content's being captured in 50 and you want to send it back to the States in 60, so when it lands, it can go straight into editorial, pardon me, it can do that. And we've got experience with those types of workflows. Also during assembly, if you're assembling something and you have legacy content and the legacy content mismatches the format of your mezzanine, then you would use PixelStrings to fix that library content. But a lot of the usage is on the back end. Once you create your final deliverable, creating all the different renditions for all the different markets that are needed, PixelStrings is the thing that you would use to make sure that all of those outputs look and sound as pristine as they possibly can. And of course, for the library and legacy content, really the engine of Tachyon and what its philosophy is, and dark energy as well, is to make the very possible best fluid playback of progressive images and make them as pristine as possible. So for all that library and legacy content that you need to lift up into your new streaming service, that's exactly what this is designed for. So it's really as simple as uploading the file into PixelStrings, telling it what to do, and pulling the file back. And of course, if your content looks good and plays clean, then you have happy viewers, and happy viewers reward all of us by paying us. So what's included with the PixelStrings? So this is a bit of an eye chart, but it includes everything. It shows, everything that's under the hood. So PixelStrings manages the storage and compute. So it connects to your S3 storage, or you can upload a file. And we are going to be adding, by the way, some additional storage options later this year. And I will do a webinar in about a month or so talking about what we would have been saying at NAB had we all been able to get together there. And at that time, I'll talk about some new partners in the storage area as well. But PixelStrings, what you see here, it's basically broken up by 5 segments. You've got storage and compute, transcoding, which includes the audio tool set, things like Dolby Audio, the codecs, Kakadu, Main Concept, Avid are the main ones that we're working on. We've got the image processing library, which is all of the things that we have. It's included. The Xenon is the new thing. That's the SDR to HDR and vice versa converter that we partnered up with Technicolor tone mapping, and Ernie will go into that a little bit more later. And it also manages all the third-party machines like Cinasert, Accurate Player, and more to come. You see Venera's name on there. That's a roadmap feature. And then we have the only thing that we database is your workflow and your basic user information. We don't keep any of your content, and we don't keep any of your credit card numbers if you use that option to reload your system. We use a third-party service called Stripe for that, and so our goal is to be as safe and clean as a thing that you can connect to as possible. All right. Let's see. Oh, one really neat thing about this is that all of the technologies you see here, they all have licenses. So in a normal ecosystem build out, you would basically have to go to each of these folks and draw down your own license, right? But PixelStrings, we've already negotiated all of these license structures with all of these different technology companies. So when you subscribe or use PixelStrings, the license is included. You don't, and there's no breakout. You don't have to worry about going and retrieving those licenses. We've done all that work. We spent several years now formulating what we think is a very straightforward, very easy to comprehend pricing system. And frankly, not only do we have to make it easy for the user, we have to make it easy for our partners. And we've done so. And so as we've added all these best of breed technologies, all these licenses are going to be fundamentally, they're all included with the pricing that we're extending to you, which is really great. Now I'm going to come back to pricing a little bit. First, we're going to hand the conch over to Ernie and let him demo the app for you. And then on the other side of that, I'll get into pricing a little bit more detail. All right, Ernie.
Thank you, Lance. So when you go to PixelStrings, www.pixelstrings.com, this is what you're going to land on. It's our welcome page slash sign up. If you click on sign up, it's going to take you to a new screen where you're going to enter an email and a password. If you have already logged in, it'll remind you by auto-populating this information that you put in before, if you saved it in your browser. Otherwise, you'll just basically put your email in, put in a password that you want, and click on register now. Once you do that, you'll be logged straight in. And I'm going to go ahead and log into an account that we've already created, just in the interest of time. I'll just go over what it looks like when you first sign up. So I won't leave that out. So this is where you're going to land. It's going to take you to your assets page. Now, what you're looking at right here is one of our subscription offerings, and we'll talk about which one that is. This is not the free. The free won't have the selected storage area here. It'll be a little bit less sparse. But I'm going to go ahead and dive into this upper right-hand corner up here first. These are kind of your account controls, and we'll go over what these three tabs do. Now, of course, this tells you your balance. We want everyone to have a $20,000 balance in their PixelStrings accounts, so please make sure you use a credit card with a lot of room on it. And then if you click here where it says webinar, you're going to have some choices. Now, some of these choices are just going to mirror what you can get to by clicking here and then going into individual items. So for example, these top three, account, storage, and workflow, that's under the settings tab, but it's kind of like a quick way to get to it. You have account state, statements. This is going to take you to the statement page, and then you have the basic things like changing your password if you want to delete. Tell you any jobs that you have completed since you signed up for the account, and you can go all the way back in history and take a look at it. Tells you your running balance when you added money to the account. If you want to add money to your account, you can do it from this page here. You basically put in the amount that you want to buy. You click on buy credit. It's going to ask you for basic thing that you would see whenever you're going to make a purchase online. You have to have your name. It's got to match up with the credit card and everything, standard credit card processing things. If I click on payment info, that's where it'll take me to the screen for the actual credit card number, expiration date, that type of stuff. Very simple to add account credit. Now, if you want to use PayPal or if you want to use a purchase order, send an email to sales@pixelstrings.com or support@pixelstrings.com. We'll work with you on getting PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, whatever you want to use to be able to, we'll make it as easy as possible for you. Okay, settings. This is going to be, personal account information. This tells you the type of subscription that you have. I can change my subscription if I want to by clicking on the little settings gear there. This thing says create team. I can have a team of users logging into the same account. That requires a certain level of subscription, and Lance will talk about that a little bit later. But I can change all that on the fly here. It tells me I'm active. My expiration will downgrade to the free tier on this date, and we'll certainly send you a 30-day notice, but anytime you go into settings, you can see exactly when you're going to be downgraded. This is your subscription cost. And then also, Lance will go over this, but it tells you what your discount is. The more you spend on a subscription, the bigger your discount. So you just have to do the math based on how many jobs you need to do, how many minutes you need to do, that type of thing will kind of dictate if a subscription is the right thing for you. Okay, you can change the UI. I'm going to jump down to here under UI setting. This is a light UI or a dark UI. I'm going to leave it on the light for this webinar, but you can certainly make those changes. If I go into storage, this is where if you have an S3 bucket, you can go in and attach it. We recommend when you create your S3 buckets, create two, one for imports and one for exports. That way you know which are the sources and which are your destinations. And then you just basically sign up. You just populate the information just like you would if you were logging into your S3 bucket. You're just giving PixelStrings the rights to be able to access the assets inside the S3 bucket. You can specify what your export folder is going to be. This happens to be called Exports Cloud, and that's it. I mean, it's the hardest part about using S3 is actually setting up the S3 account. It's not attaching that S3 to PixelStrings. And a lot of folks have told us that they really like the way that you can browse the assets in our storage interface a lot better than what Amazon provides, with their standard offering. Okay, the last thing is workflow. There's this thing where we have some built-in workflows. Right now, what's built into the system, these Netflix workflows, these are Netflix blessed ProRes formats for licensed content submission. When we have a couple of other things for frame rate conversion using IMF, you will have another button here for Netflix IMF submissions, things like that. These are for the built-in workflows that you can't alter, but they're always present so you can access them. Okay, the last tab that I want to go over up here is support. If you click on this PixelStrings Users Guide and you click on Configure Account, this is going to kind of walk you through some of the things that you're going to see whenever you sign up for the account for the first time. It's going to tell you what to do, what to fill out. The other link here is creating a workflow. Same type of thing. It's going to teach you after this webinar. If you want some hints on what to do, just click on that, and it'll walk you through exactly what you need to do, what you need to set to be able to complete a workflow. Let me go ahead and go back to the support tab. Resources, these are all pretty important. FAQs, it's exactly what you think it is. Release notes, this is the different things that we have done with the platform since its inception. And so if you're wondering if there was maybe a bug or a user interface thing that you weren't familiar with before, that you thought needed to be updated, it wasn't easy to become familiar with it, check these release notes. We'll let you know what's been updated. On the Amazon S3 setup, we actually created a video, and it's on Vimeo, for how to actually generate how to set up your S3 account and how to attach it to PixelStrings. So that's helpful if you need that. IMF 101 white paper. This is a white paper written by John Hurst, who is the SMPTE chair for IMF, and so he wrote quite a few words for us about what it is, and excellent resource if you're diving into IMF for the first time and you need to know from the guy who heads the SMPTE committee on it what his thoughts are on it. Tachyon settings guide. This is on our Cinnafilm support website, and this is all about how do you do a Tachyon conversion. And we give you the rating grid interface as well as a Telestream Vantage interface, because Tachyon is available in both of those platforms. That's also built into PixelStrings, but if you need to get to it outside of PixelStrings, there you go. And then the last thing, an IMF 101 tutorial. This is a video that was done at IBC, which is very, very helpful if you're getting into IMF. Okay, that's it for the upper right corner. Let's go ahead and dive into the assets, and we'll talk about submitting a job. Okay, so once I have all my assets here, I have a choice of looking at it from two ways. I can look at my import bucket, which is going to be my S3 bucket, and these are all the assets that are in there. Or I can say, no, I want to look at the PixelStrings storage. When you have a subscription account with PixelStrings, you get managed storage. How much storage you get is dependent on the size of the subscription that you have, the type of subscription that you have subscribed to. So right now, the version that I have gives me 200 gigabytes of storage, and that is both a combination of source and destination. I, as the user, can control when I delete the asset just by clicking on the trash can, and then also I can download the asset, and your egress charges will apply because that's how Amazon likes to make money, is on egress of storage. And this plus here is how I select my workflow. So let's take a look at this asset really quick. This is a 4K denoise. It went to UHD. Okay, fine. So let's go ahead and do one. Let's do anything to 2997i ProRes. And it tells me that there's an issue, and it says telecine should be disabled for UHD inputs. Okay, so we need to go back and make that change. Basically, what happens is that anytime there is a issue with the workflow you chose and the asset you're trying to render, and if there is a mismatch in our validation step, we're going to tell you, hey, you got an issue, go fix it, because we don't want you to run an asset that just won't work. So let's pick a different asset so I don't have to go change the workflows. This is an SD asset, and let's say I want to go and use this anything to 25i ProRes. Okay, so it's going to go through, validate the job. Hey, it's all good. My cost is going to be $3.09, and but let's say I don't want to. I really don't want to spend that much money because I just want to make sure it's working okay. Well, a couple of things I can do. First thing I can do is I can, because I'm going to be testing it, I can adjust the file output name, and I could say I want the workflow to be named after the file name. So that way, when I generate this file, I know I did it with the anything to 25i ProRes HQ. And that way I can see it directly from the asset list. I don't have to go and search on the jobs page and match it up, and that way I know which is which. It tells me immediately that this was the anything to 25i ProRes. I can enable test mode. Now, as soon as I enable test mode, it's going to recalculate the cost. And the reason why is that all of the image processing, not the egressing or anything like that, but all the image processing is half price. There you go. So if I click on show details, it's going to tell you what the per minute price was, the number of billable minutes, discount is 50%, and then you have your download fee of 30 cents. So that's how that works there. If I want to even get more granular, I can say, you know what, I don't want to do the whole thing. I just need to do the last, 30 seconds or so. And there we go. Now it's $1.15 to run this process against this file. Now, once I click on this complete workflow selection, it gets queued up right here. This tells me what's going to go on. It's going to be the Moesha clip. It's going to use anything to 25i. It's in test clip mode. It's going to cost me $1.15, and I'll click on submit jobs. Now, as soon as I submit jobs, it's going to get a little successful message, and then it'll take you to the jobs page to show you that it is now prepping the job for processing. Okay, while this processes, let's talk about how we create those workflows. Okay, as I mentioned before, there are some built-in workflows when you first sign in, and those, when you click on this, you're going to see them. Now, these here will be here in perpetuity. You can't change them, but you can duplicate them. And let's just go ahead and start with one. Let's start with anything to 50p. Okay, so this is anything to 50p ProRes HQ, and we have a really good description here of what's going to happen when you select this workflow. And I'm not going to read through all these things, but basically it's going to turn on our deinterlacers, our telecine pattern removers, motion comp when needed. It's going to make sure that if you're dealing with going from a high frame rate to a low frame rate, it inserts motion blur. Pretty much anything from higher frame rates. So if you put in 120p or 100p source and you're going to 50p, there's going to be a little bit of motion blur that gets between the two. If you were to compare a 50p and 100p of the same exact asset, the 100p is going to be a lot more crisp frame by frame by frame than a 50p. 50p is pretty crisp, but there is going to be some motion blur compared to what 100p could do. So if you're generating 50p, we're going to automatically generate that frame accurate motion blur to make sure you don't have any strobe effects on your assets. So anyway, this kind of lists everything that's going to happen. And if you want to use this as a way to learn how to use and build the workflows, great. That's what they're here for. So let's kind of walk through what's involved. So once you set the name and the workflow description, of course, you don't have to do anything in the workflow description. You can just put the name in. It's just nice to know what you're going to do to the asset. Okay, target, you can do a standard or an IMF. We're going to keep in the standard world for right now. Wrapper, codec, preset, these are all Apple blessed and approved ProRes generations. So no, you don't have to worry about would it be approved by Apple if it was submitted? The answer is yes, because we are an Apple partner. Image, output frame rate, output resolution, scan type, you can change that to interlaced upper field or lower field first, depending on your resolution. Anything up to 4K DCI, or you can do custom, where I can put in an 8K asset right here. So if I want to put in, if I want to generate an 8K asset, no problem. I just put the raster in that I want to be able to work with. I'm going to go back to HD. Frame rates, select what you want. Up here as well, let me just go over the codecs and wrappers really quick. QuickTime, MXF, MPEG, Transport Stream, and MP4. We're going to be adding a lot more codecs to these as the days go on. Probably by May 1st, there's going to be 2 or 3 additional codecs and wrappers added to this. But basically, you just select what you want here. We have DNX and ProRes and QuickTime, MPEG Transport Stream. That's going to be H.265. So yeah, you can take a look at this and see what our codec and wrapper offerings are. Source sizing, match input display aspect ratio, 4:3 or 16:9. Now, there are a lot of CinemaScope and there's a lot of other resolutions, 1:1, 9:16. If right now we have this geared towards broadcast of 4:3 and 16:9, but if you guys need to do a different resolution, display aspect ratio, send us a note at support@pixelstrings.com. We can always add any other display aspect ratio that you guys need, and we're going to be adding quite a few more. Just, you know, if you have one that you need, let us know what it is. Framing mode, this is all about when you're up-resing or down-resing. Do you want to add letterbox, pillar box? Do you want to do a center extraction on the image, or do you want to stretch the image? We always start with the fit. If you're doing an anamorphic stretch, then of course, then you would do a stretch, and it wouldn't look like that. It would look normal. So it all just depends on what you want to achieve, but we give you those 3 options. If you want to do something like crop out the top 32 lines of VBI, you set your crop region right here. It will automatically up-res the image using our Tachyon or dark energy if you turned it on, to be able to make sure it fills the raster with a very, very high quality up-resed image. If you want to specify a starting time code of your file, this is where you do that. Audio, this is set right now for 1 track by default. If you need to add audio, you can do so. Let's say I want to drop the audio, want to do or just do pass through. I can also, same thing with data, I can add tracks as desired. So it's a pretty robust way to add and remove tracks. This is going to change dramatically though in the Skywalker Sound, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this is kind of where this is, and in about a month and a half time frame, the Skywalker Sound stuff's going to be in there. It's going to be, you guys are going to really love it. It's really flexible, and you do a lot with it. Okay, convert fix. This is, if you hover over that, it says powered by Tachyon. This is our Tachyon. There is no difference between this Tachyon and Tachyon deployed in enterprise transcoders. All the same engine is there. You have the analysis options, you have the motion compensation options, you have the output options. These are all for preserving filmic look. And if you have selected this anything to 50p, everything is checked that needs to be, to make sure that when you do an output, it is going to retain the look and feel as the originator intended. We do not do any harm. All this upsampling of 25p to a true 50p, 2 things happen with that. 1, you turn it into a really bad looking home movie, and 2, you generate artifacts. It's almost impossible to generate 2x the frame rate and not generate artifacts. It's just really hard not to do. Plus, again, the bottom line is you're altering the artistic intent, and us as distributors of content, it's not our place to alter the artistic intent of the content that's been created. We're very emphatic about this. We talk about that, and if you hover over any of these tooltips, especially down here in the output options, we certainly talk about why this is important to use all of these output options that we have here. Okay, the next tab, this is dark energy. Optimized texture, it says powered by dark energy. This is all about removing noise, so you get better low bit compressions, you get much better up-resing, you get superlative SDR to HDR up-converts. This is critical. And so we have some tooltips for each one of the filters that we have. We explain what they do. Essentially, this is Gaussian noise. This is going to be wavelet noise. This is also wavelet noise or impulse noise. The sharpening, self-explanatory. We have chroma noise reduction, and then we have dust busting. All of these things have these tooltips that explain exactly how and why you want to use them. Texture, we have some things here. If you're doing broadcast, you click this, and we're going to set this for broadcast texture. And the reason why you want to put broadcast texture in is when after you denoise and upres, that image may look a little plastic just because grain and noise provide that warmth, and basically this puts that warmth back in. 35 millimeter film is exactly that. So I'm going to leave it on disabled. So again, I mentioned before about denoising to do some functions. HDR is one of those things. This is our partnership with Technicolor. And right now this little note comes up that says HDR disabled. And the reason why is because we only have it working with H.265. ProRes is going to be around the corner very shortly. We have to get that all the new HDR stuff on ProRes blessed by Apple. So once that's done, then you'll have a ProRes option for this. But right now this is HDR disabled because it's not an H.265 output. This ITM from Technicolor, let me tell you, this thing is AI machine learning based, and it is incredible. The color tone mapping from SDR 100 nits to 1,000 nits or higher, up to 2,000 nits, is incredibly accurate. Oranges are orange, reds are reds, yellows are yellows. I mean, it's one of those things that it's hard pressed to say that that asset did not originate as HDR after it's gone through the Technicolor process. And it's one beautiful thing. It's 100% automated as we've integrated it here. There is an upcharge for this. There is a slight upcharge for it, and Lance will talk about those type of things. But basically, it's pretty simple. We have I have to change the codec, and I'll do that really quick. Let's go ahead and change this to contrast. And I'm going to change workflows. Now, the reason why I got that message is because I had some things that I had changed, and it was telling me, hey, do you want to change this, save it, or should you want to move off of this before you change your workflow? Okay, again, we don't want people to put work into generating their workflows and they click one button, then all of a sudden, all those changes are lost. So anytime you're going to lose something, we're going to prompt you to make sure you want to make that change. Okay, so this is where you would select your type of conversion. HDR, S-Log3, HLG, those will be added very, very shortly. We're rounding the corner on that. The model, right now, these are the 3 tone mapping models that are built in. And we give you a little bit of a description here about what each one of these are best used for. Some of the settings here, color space settings, this is output luminance, 500 to 2000 nits. Bright spot controls, kind of tell you about what that's for here. And then saturation, if your source asset is a little bit saturated and you need to tone that down a little bit because it's really blowing up in the HDR space, you can reduce the color saturation here in percentages. So that's what the settings are for this. The next version of this that comes out is going to have, if you guys are users of the Technicolor ITM SDK, where you have created your own profiles, then you'll be able to map every one of those settings in the profiles in the next release of this. We're just wrapping up the GUI on that thing, so we're pretty excited about it. But if you have started to use this Technicolor process, I don't think there's anything else that you guys are going to want to use, because it's incredible what you can do when you use the automated processing of this thing. Retiming, this is our wormhole technology. So if you have an asset that you want to remove 5% of the runtime, I would do a percentage shorten, for example, and I would just put in 5. And then once I put that in, it's going to use our motion compensation engine to automatically remove 5% without dropping frames. We are not a frame dropping company. We don't blend frames, we don't drop frames, we create frames from motion compensation data. Other people might call it optical flow, but every frame is a new frame that gets generated. If I want to start the retime at a specific time code, I set that here. So let's say I have the asset starts at 58:30. I have 1 minute and 30 of color bars and slate, and then the asset starts at 1 o'clock. I would put in a starting time code of 1 o'clock here. And then ending time code is exactly that. I wanted to retime the asset by 5% up to a certain point, and then after that, I don't care. That's what the ending time code is for. And if you forget what that is, again, the tooltip tells you exactly what's going on with that. Now, when it comes to audio, you have to tell it what to do. So let's say I have this file that has 2 tracks of discrete audio. So I'll do mono 1 add, and then I'll do mono 1 add. And the reason why we want to group these is we want to prevent audio phasing. So when we're pitch correcting and retiming that audio, you have to make sure that you set your audio channel layout correct for the target. The last thing that I'll talk about is broadcast compliance. This is legalization. So if you want to do an EBU R103 optimum, you select this, and all of the needs and everything will be assigned so that way you don't exceed these DPP settings. One last comment about everything that we do here in PixelStrings. You generate these workflows 99% of the time with what you want the asset to be, not what it is today. The idea of PixelStrings is we do the analysis. We determine everything about the asset. We determine frame by scene by scene. Is it progressive? Is it interlaced? Is it telecine? We determine scene by scene by scene. Is it upper field first or lower field first with the telecine dominance? All that stuff happens automatically. So when you look at these assets and we say anything to 23976, we literally mean you put anything in here and it's going to become 23976 ProRes HQ. And we've defaulted it to 1920 by 1080, but to change this, all you have to do is go in here and say, I want it to be 20 consumer 4K. And now I hit save. And it'll say there's a workflow error and say, well, what's going on? I can't save this. So I have to duplicate the workflow and save it. Okay, great. So let's duplicate it. I've duplicated it. I've got this 4K here. Now I can hit save, and there it is. There's my copy. And let's say I want to change the name. I want to change this anything to ProRes instead of that. I want to change it to anything to ProRes HQ UHD. And I click on rename workflow. Bingo, it's done. So again, that's kind of how you can use these things to generate your new workflows. But the main point again is that doesn't matter what you put into it, this is exactly what it's going to become. And Lance, go ahead and take it from there.
Thanks, Ernie. Okay, I'm gonna get into budgetary tips and give you a little more information about the pricing model. So the pricing model I'm gonna show you now is the cloud pricing, and we have 2 components. One is the utility rate, which is basically pay as you go, and it's based on the runtime output minute. And this rate card, which is published on the site, pixelstrings.com, is the rate card that includes all of the Cinnafilm technology and all of the compute to run the machine. If you select a third-party workflow like the Technicolor piece or the Skywalker Sound piece as it relates to retiming, we'll upcharge you for that. Same thing with Cinasert. I will note that the Skywalker Sound loudness correction and analyze tool is a fundamental included part of the technology because we see that as and mixing, and we see that as a fundamental necessary component of the equation. So essentially, in order to price out what this is going to cost you, all you have to do is figure out your volume in minutes and divide by the price you're going to be paying. Now, we have tiered subscriptions online as well for the cloud system. It starts with free, so it costs you nothing to sign up, upload a clip, try it out, walk away, and it's $1.99 a minute, basically, for HD or less, okay? But if you want to explore the different tiers, we have 5 tiers. The first 3 are individual tiers, and you can see for each one, you get more perks. For example, you go up to the personal tier, you get 20% off the rate card, you get 100 gigs of storage, you get some extra social and training events perks. You go up to professional, and you get 30% off, you get the 200 gigs, and what's not listed here but will, once it's ready, is the Accurate Player license, which will allow you to view proxies from your cloud storage. The multi-user accounts are essentially for folks that want to connect to the API. Certainly you can use the GUI, but in order to have access to the API, you would get a team or an enterprise account. And the big difference between the two is basically 40 or 50% off the jobs, 2 terabytes versus 4 terabytes, or 5 users versus 10 users. So it just depends on the scope of your needs, right? So I'm going to come back to my presentation. So let's go over some budgetary tips. The first thing I want to implore everybody is that the cloud works. It's here, it's ready to go, try it out. This is a great time to explore various cloud services, especially when you don't have full access to maybe some of the tools at your facility. While you're at home, you can try these things out, but it does work. Next, you should start a cost journal, because PixelStrings is a media conversion service, but it's not all the other components that might be needed with the ecosystem. There's a lot of things that you need to plan for besides PixelStrings. You need to figure out what your storage strategy is. You need to figure out what your data rates are going to be. It's going to be different depending on where you live and what your throughput, all those types of things. But these are things that are easy to understand if you're keeping good track of them. And of course, the QC protocol is a big one. I'll come back to that in a minute. Here's a big one. So be okay with spending to learn. Basically, you need to be okay with, spending money to learn the processes that are available to you in the cloud. You think about how much a facility might end up paying for a 1-hour meeting with 20 people in it. You're able to basically test PixelStrings for as much as it costs to get a cup of coffee, okay? And you sort of have to build that into the entire thought process here. Is it's going to cost me money to learn and to try out these things and to vet them so that I can be sure that they meet the demands of my business and that the content is looking and sounding like it's supposed to. PixelStrings absolutely is designed with OpEx in mind. Basically, none of the licenses that are included in the whole stack of software are being sold to you permanently. You are basically subscribing them for short-term usage. Whether that's subscription or utility, utility is basically if you run it for 1 minute or 2 minutes, it's a 1 minute or a 2 minute subscription, okay? So this is absolutely OpEx. So if you're being mandated to start exploring the difference of running these types of workflows in an OpEx mode, then this is definitely a tool that you should be taking a look at. So running footage in the cloud, workflows like these in the cloud run approximately 5 times the cost of running them on-prem. And what do I mean by that? If you have a full stack of software on Metal and you run it 335 and you amortize the total cost of that over 3 years, you include power, you include IT, it's going to be roughly 5 times cheaper per minute, okay, to run that on-prem. But that assumes that you're running it at greater than 20% uptime. So that's about 100,000 minutes. So if your volume is over 100,000 minutes, you should probably have an on-prem system. It's cheaper. If your volume is under 100,000 minutes, it's cheaper to use it in the cloud. So that's the way that we've built this. And the other nice thing about that is if you're building a larger ecosystem and you know your total volume, let's say in the millions of minutes, you divide that by the number of on-prem to meet your standard workflow, and then you can consider the cloud your true burst capacity for when something comes in the door and you don't have the Metal on-prem or your virtual workstations set up to be able to handle that. You can send it safely to the cloud and get it done. Now, the other thing about the cloud, it is 5 times more expensive, but it's also got 100 to 500 machines available at your disposal. That means the turnaround time is much, much lower for large volumes of work. So if you have to get something into a customer's hand very quickly and it's a large volume of work, you can get it done in a couple of days versus a couple of months with a single on-prem stack. So all of these strategies need to be thought about when you're building these things out. And very importantly, Ernie talked about the test mode. I can't reiterate this enough. We really built this in here so that you could explore workflows till your heart's content. We have one user that we see like clockwork. He'll run 20 or 30 jobs all at 1 minute increments, and then you'll see the one big job. And that's basically someone that's trying and trying and trying the workflow, and once they're happy, then they process the whole thing. And that's a very smart way to use this, and that's exactly what it's designed for. I will mention, I don't think Ernie mentioned it, that the test mode, of course, watermarks in the output. So it's not usable, but it is usable for vetting the picture quality. Our watermark is semi-opaque, so you should be able to see the picture quality on that. Now, the QC process is probably the most complicated piece of the whole cloud puzzle. And it's not like we're here to say, oh, we've figured this out, but we have, seen very smart ways and seen some really great companies building different technology systems that'll allow you to do QC in the cloud. For example, Bebop enables you to have a virtual desktop sitting right next to your data and storage, and you can run all kinds of apps on that and view it. And they use, I believe, Teradici technology to view the screens over the internet. We're teaming up with Accurate Player. So now what that means, of course, is that you're going to need to create a second layer proxy out of the output. So it is going to cost a little bit more to store and create proxies, and of course the data stream coming back over the internet. But again, it's cumulative cost. It's really not that much to create a proxy and view it. And the Accurate Player is frame accurate playback. It's really an excellent tool, and we're super excited about that. We should have that in the system here this summer. And of course, choose your MAM and your workflow technology carefully. Some folks do it themselves. There are a lot of good companies that are building these technologies so that you can automate things like, okay, when my on-prem system reaches max capacity, it switches over to the cloud, but it knows because it switches over to charge 5 times as much or whatever. All of that logic that's logic that's like outside of what's available in PixelStrings. Again, we're a media conversion service, but it's just something to think about. And we've seen, boy, some really great technology companies that we do work with presently. So if you want a little more information, you're kind of thinking, well, not only do I think I need this, but I probably need that as well. Happy to make some introductions with some of the folks that we're working with, or just tell you what we've heard. I mean, we really look at the cloud as sort of like a much more cooperative ecospace where everybody needs to get along and we're all in it together. So we take that mentality. So if we're happy to point you in directions with companies we don't work with that we've heard are great as well, because we're all learning on this journey, certainly. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming down the pipe here. The most exciting piece of news in the immediate future is the Skywalker Sound audio toolset. You'll see a snapshot here of the GUI that we're developing. It is exclusive. This toolset is exclusive to the PixelStrings media conversion platform. Loudness analysis and correction is going to be designed to handle all the major streaming platforms. If we're missing one, let us know. I'm sure that they'll work with us and add it. And it's really designed to provide excellent auto correction of loudness for all of these outputs. And it also provides down mixing and remapping. The upcharge is going to be for the audio retiming component. That's a secondary piece of technology that's a little more complicated. But the reason we partnered with these folks is they're just awesome at audio. That's all there is to it, and we're super excited to be working with them and learning as we go. So look for this release. We're hoping next month, but it could be June. We want it to work right. We want it to be stable. We want it to work out of the gate. So, and we want to make Skywalker proud for selecting the PixelStrings platform. So we're not going to release it till it's working really well, but we're thinking June at the latest. Okay, I'll close with a few final comments here. I just wanted to thank you all again for taking the time, and know that we're dedicated to this roadmap. We started the PixelStrings journey several years ago. We've learned a lot, and there's still lots to learn. We love doing this stuff. It's really an exciting prospect to be able to put together a system as we see it, and bring all of these different best-of-breed technologies to be able to access for you. And this is super exciting for us. So we're dedicated to this roadmap. One parting thought is that this technology is up and running today. It's running now. It's not something that's coming down the road. I mean, if you're a Tachyon user and you don't have access to your on-prem Tachyon, just give this a shot and see if you like it. And we are going to be partnering with a variety of other people. So PixelStrings isn't going to be just self-serve, but we basically follow where our customers ask us to go. And the cloud started coming into our radar several years ago, and so we're really glad we jumped in when we did. If you have any questions about the API or any other questions, please contact us at info@pixelstrings. Happy to point you in the right direction. And remember that if you fill out the survey at the end of this and you get it to us by Monday, we will credit your account $50, and that will get you about 50 minutes of test mode for free. And of course, there are other, if you want an inexpensive way to get into S3, I believe AWS provides a free user account for like 5 or 10 gigs. So just an inexpensive way to kick the tires. So I'm going to get into the questions now. And Ernie's got my back if I'm in over my head. The first question I see here is, will Dolby Audio include Atmos? It will eventually, not right out of the gate. We're going to be focused on AC3 formats, but we definitely have an eye on immersive audio, and that's one of the key reasons we worked with Dolby to bring that to the platform. The goal is to try to get that in there by the end of this year again, but getting certified and getting all these things shored up properly is, we want to make sure Dolby's happy. So it's definitely on the roadmap. Next question. Function like true grid. I'm going to pass this on to Ernie. Ernie, it's the question is, will there function like true grid of radiant grid to split a long clip into parts to convert at the same time? I think he's asking about, does the transcoder split? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at that. I mean, whenever you do a segmented wormhole retime, you're essentially splitting a file up into many pieces and transcoding each one of those pieces according to how much compute resource you have. So that ability to split a file into many pieces is still going to be part of PixelStrings when we release the segmented retime function of that. And so the question is there going to be a benefit, and is it going to be possible to also do the just the splitting of a normal file into many pieces to transcode it faster? We'll look into that. We haven't decided if that is something that we want to continue, just because mainly security. And here's why I say that. Whenever we spin up a virtual instance to process things, as soon as the thing finishes, it's torn down. So that means all of the scratch drives, all the render drives that were used are immediately wiped, right? And one of the things about gridding is having machines talk to each other to be able to send completed parts to a single repository. That can start when you're dealing in Amazon. It could start to be somewhat of a we're keeping machines up longer than we normally would, and that kind of that, I'm saying that compromises security, but it becomes something that we have to really think through all of those things on how we want to handle it, just because we're so paranoid about our customers' assets and making sure that only they have access to them and making sure that they can get to them. That, you know, it's one of those things that I don't know that we'll be doing the split and stitch for general transcodes. Plus, compute is getting faster and faster every day, so it might be beneficial to just leverage that as opposed to doing the split and stitch. But it's a good question. It's a function that quite a few Radiant Grid users have invoked in their workflows, and if there is a way to safely maintain that, then we certainly will.
Thanks, Ernie. So we're going to keep answering questions. The hour's coming up on us about 8 minutes from now, and basically we'll just keep going until folks drop off. So I'm going to go down to the next answer, Q&A next, which is any plans to work with IMF as an input format? I'll take that one. Absolutely. Not the first folks to ask. We are working with Cinnafilm to use IMF as an input format. We've got a few nuts to tighten on the retiming of precise picture and sound when we do some complex conversions. Once we do that, we'll be working on IMF as an input. Also, one of the reasons we're teamed up with Cinnafilm is we do want to bring DCP as an output format and as an input format to the platform as well. And so our IMF and our DCP roadmap is our goal is to be buttoned up with that by the end of the year. So, but right now, it cannot take IMF as an input now, but look for that in probably 4 months, just ballpark. We do send out, whenever we push out a minor release that includes like new power features, we send out a tech bulletin to all registered PixelStrings users. You're certainly welcome to unsubscribe from that if you turn out that you don't like the tool set, et cetera. But we do that so that you're constantly informed about what's coming. And we try to focus on what the new feature is and not worry too much about the exact timing of the next feature, because each time we add a new machine to this large machine ecosystem running in the cloud, it makes the whole system a little more complex, and we want to build the trust work to be really strong and sturdy. Next question here. Are there different SLAs for support based on the tier subscription, and is there support for stitching multiple inputs into final outputs? Is there support for embedded 608 closed captions? So I'll take the SLA question as far as baseline support, and then I'll let Ernie answer about the stitching and the 608 closed captions. So as far as the SLA, so PixelStrings, the cost of standard support is included with every time that you use it. So if you catch a bug or you have an issue, you just report it and we get to it as we can. When you subscribe to higher tiered subscription plans, your subscription or your issue gets elevated quicker. If you are in the team or the enterprise, you have access to the API, and that is a separate SLA. So basic support is included for all PixelStrings users all the time. And it's as soon as we can get to the problem. But if you have a team or an enterprise account, basically, then you are connecting to the API, and that's a separate SLA, and that's one of those contact us, and we'll give you the informations. And if you have a professional or a basic plan, then we do provide a little bit of extra time and energy. We just try to balance it. You know, we're the team size we are, and we try to balance it equally and fairly across. But at the end of the day, even if you come in and you run a one job and it does something and you submit a ticket, that gets in the queue. And so it just becomes part of trying to make the machine better. Ernie, do you want to take the question? Is there support for stitching multiple inputs into final outputs? And is there support for embedded 608?
Absolutely. So let's start with the stitching. The cool thing about the Rating Grid transcoding platform, which is the engine underneath PixelStrings, is that the ability to stitch things together has been there for geez, almost 10 years now. We bought Rating Grid about 3 years ago, and we have over the through working through our customers over the past 3 years, we've learned about the crazy amount of stitching that people are doing when they submit things from their MAM via XML into Rating Grid. So the last one that we assisted the customer with that wanted to do something new was stitching black in front and maybe in back of the file. And yeah, not a problem. They can certainly do that. So it's just an XML submission in Rating Grid. Now let's translate that to PixelStrings. The cool thing about PixelStrings is because the interface is a lot more extensible than the older Silverlight-based interface of Rating Grid. We can generate that XML template very quickly, automatically on the fly, and we could certainly go in and go to an asset page that you saw before, and select assets and stitch them together in whatever order you want to. Or if you want to bring in a new audio track and overlay it on top of and strip the audio out of 3 video tracks. That XML is easy to generate, and it's even easier for PixelStrings to take that XML, have it become part of the front end of it, and then translate it to a back-end command set for the engine to actually transcode. So to answer your question, yes, it can. Does it do it today? No, but we're looking to add a lot of those easy to add features between now and June, whenever the Skywalker Sound audio stuff is ready, because a lot of people want to do some crazy cool things with audio, and being able to do those type of stitchings and that kind of stuff, it's going to be part of what makes that Skywalker Sound audio toolset so powerful. So probably looking around the June timeframe. If you are a customer of Rating Grid today, though, you can do that stitching right now. There's no delay at all in doing that. Okay, 608 captions. Yes, we fully support 608 captions in Rating Grid. Again, that's the engine underneath things. Whenever you generate your profile, you can put your captions in the SMPTE Vanc data, or if it's an MPEG-based output, you can put it inside the MPEG user data. And you can say, I want to do a 608, or I want to do a 608 to 708 translation, or anything you want to do. So absolutely, 608 captions. We haven't had a request for 608 captions inside of PixelStrings, but we will put a note down take a note right now, and we will get 608 captions added as an option because once again, it's already in the engine. It's just a matter of bringing the dial out to the front of the PixelStrings platform to be able to invoke that feature. But yes, fully supported. We just have to update the user interface of PixelStrings so we can do that. By June, it should be there.
And Ernie, there's another follow-on question to the audio one, which is, can they currently be mapped or combined or duplicated in output, the audio channels, or are we waiting for the Skywalker audio to invoke that? And can you clarify that?
Certainly. So all of the heavy-duty audio channel remapping, loudness processing. One of the cool things about the Skywalker Sound audio loudness processing is, let's say you have 4 groups or 4 tracks of audio, and you want to do a different loudness processing for each one of those different tracks of audio. The Skywalker Sound audio allows you to do that. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do. The channel remapping, I can take one track or one channel of a track, and I can make it appear in multiple tracks. It's sky's the limit essentially with the Skywalker audio stuff. The way that the audio is currently situated inside PixelStrings, it's limited, and we've kind of taken the the stance that until we have the Skywalker Sound, it's going to be just some limited things. You can add tracks. You can do a little bit of remapping, but the real functionality that I think you want is going to be in the Skywalker, which will be out in June.
Thank you, Ernie. Quick question about, I think I can manage this one. How long does it take to typically convert a 90-minute content? So if you're doing 90 minutes on-prem HD, it should be real time, including transcode and image processing. If you're doing it in the cloud, the actual transcode and image processing isn't going to be any slower. What adds time is the upload time and the turning on the machine. So it's basically you're looking at it just depends on the size of the file, but you can kind of count on a 2x roughly, because it's going to take a few minutes to fire up all the machines. Okay, now it's ready to do the work. Then it copies the file. If it's a large file, it'll be pretty quick. If it's a big file, it takes some time, because we actually copy the file from your S3 storage over to the big bay, right? And then we do all the work on it, then we return it. So the time is really in the copying phase. And Ernie showed the jobs tab, and in that jobs tab you can actually watch the process, so you can make sure something doesn't get hung up, because every once in a while, AWS, for all its large madness, can do a lot of things, but sometimes things do get hitched up, and we won't charge you if there's a failed job.
And one thing to keep in mind is that the charging is going to be based on the running minute of the output, not the actual processing time. So
Right.
That's always important to know how quickly we're going to get the asset out for turnaround times and things like that.
Right.
Just know that if something were to happen and the Amazon instance that we had to procure was an N-2 generation server, just because that was all that was available to run the job, Cinnafilm pays that cost. The user does not.
Right, thank you. Quick question about on-prem options. Basically, if you're interested in the on-prem software, all you have to do, email us at info@pixelstrings.com. We'll get you a pricing quote, because it just depends on what you're trying to do. When we do on-prem, just so you know, it's a little bit different. Everything's included in the cloud, but on-prem, it's a little more a la carte, okay? And that's just how the system works. So you'll have a PixelStrings front end, you'll need a transcoding component, you'll need image processing, but in that situation, it's a slightly different pricing model. And happy to provide that information as we go. But the main thing was talking about the cloud and how that pricing is set up. Question for you, Ernie. Can we transfer pre-built, if we're already a Radiant Grid Tachyon user, can we transfer current pre-built profiles into PixelStrings?
I think there's not a automated script that will take it, parse it, and then upload it. The user interface is so different, but the underlying XML, very much the same. I don't think so. The good thing is that the profiles are pretty easy to build in PixelStrings, and if you had any issues you weren't sure that it was correct, you could always send us the profile and we could double check your workflow for you. But I will talk to our engineers to find out if there is a way to do it, because ultimately, when we submit the job, it's got to look pretty much like what the Radiant Grid interface submits. So there's got to be a way to do that. I just don't think we've had anyone ask us for it, and so, but I'll certainly find out if we can.
Yeah, and it won't be a lot of elbow grease involved, because keep in mind that the PixelStrings is sort of the superset API. So it includes the API that would typically run the transcode engine and typically run Tachyon and dark energy and wormhole. So if you already have those and you have commands that are running those, you're not looking at anything that we've changed fundamentally in the API. It's just that PixelStrings is a sort of a larger API. So there'll just be a few extra things related to storage and some of the new third-party technologies if you use them. So I don't see it as being a big lift to do that, but certainly we'll follow up with you on that. And as far as getting trials, someone has asked me, can we get a trial for on-premise? Absolutely, that would be part of the process. But the first thing we do when you ask about on-premise is we educate you and we tell you exactly how it works and what it costs, and you give us a little indication on what you're trying to do, because doing an on-premise trial for a giant stack of software is time consuming, both for us and for you. And we want to make sure that you know exactly what it is you need or what you think you need, and we get everything sort of staged into the point where you're basically ready to install it. Because when you're on-prem, don't forget you got to have the metal ready or the virtual environment ready. You've got to be sort of ready to go. And once all that is lined up, that's when we provide a 30-day trial period based on a conditional purchase order. And that's because we've already talked about all the details, and there's no surprises at the end when you say, oh, the trial went well, and what, I didn't know it cost that, or I didn't realize I had to do this. And so we get all that stuff out on the table just so you have a full, clear view of everything before we move forward. Let's see, we got just a couple more.
There's one we missed above. It was how often is PixelStrings updated? So we update PixelStrings, oh my gosh, it's pretty often. As a matter of fact, we're going to be rolling out Tachyon 9, which is our latest and greatest image processing library within the next 24 hours. And so if that has our new dual stage deinterlacer, our 10th generation motion compensation engine, I mean, that's rolling out tomorrow. And we just did a user interface update yesterday. So it's one of those things. We try to make it seamless to you. One day you'll just log in and a feature will be there, and away it goes. I mean, the whole idea and the beautiful thing about being in the cloud is that allows us to keep things latest and greatest. If there's a bug that we find that got reported, we don't have to go and scurry and update 300 locations, 500 locations. It's one location, it's one golden image that we push up there to the cloud, and then anytime you work on PixelStrings, it's got the bug fix or it has the new feature. So the really cool thing about owning everything with platforms as service is that we always are trying to push the envelope. We're always trying to put the new features out there, always trying to improve quality, and we push those things out. As soon as we see a material difference in what our customers could be expecting, we push it out. So if I were to guess, we'll have, I don't know, 12 to 15 updates to PixelStrings this year. Mm-hmm. So it's often, very often are we updating.
But we'll send notices when the updates have some significant tool sets added. That's that way we don't overpopulate your inboxes. We sort of let you know when a major release, quote unquote, is coming out and what that impact will look like. And again, the release notes are on the support page, and that gives you a nice history as far as what's changed. And if we find anything like we know a certain workflow suddenly isn't working for some strange reason, and we can't figure it out, oftentimes we won't necessarily hold up a whole feature release set if we don't see a lot of usage on that. So we would post that knowledge in the release notes, just so people, if you have an issue, go look at the release notes and see if it's one of the known issues. So I think, and then there's one more question here, Ernie, about security, about how do we manage storage security?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned that in one of my answers, but when you upload the file into S3, you are leveraging what Amazon does with security for that. When you give PixelStrings that information and you have set your passwords and your authentications in PixelStrings, that is your gateway to your assets. As long as you haven't shared anything, no one is going to have access to those assets except for you. The question about what happens once we transcode the asset. Well, once we transcode the asset disappears forever, because every transcode is its own unique virtual instance. As soon as it's completed, we don't want to be paying to keep the meter running for any reason. As soon as it's finished and it's moved, that machine is gone, and when that machine is gone, that means all the storage, all the scratch drives, everything that rendered that asset is also gone. So good question about security. We're paranoid about security. So yeah, we only have our hands on your assets long enough to get the job done, and then we hand them back to you and say, you do what you want with them.
Right. Thanks, Ernie. So I'll wrap this up. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. I'd like to just add one final comment after thanking everyone for their time and say, Cinnafilm here, we're successful if you're successful. So if you have questions or you have an issue or you want to understand something, reach out to us, talk to us, and because we want you to have a great experience. And if you don't, then we need to hear about it. So please do feel free to reach out, and we'll do our very best to get back to you as quickly as possible. Thank you again for all the time and energy. Stay safe out there. We should be doing another webinar down the line. It'll be an NAB update for what it's worth. If you'd like to attend that, we'll give you some more details. But thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about PixelStrings today. I appreciate it sincerely. And on behalf of Cinnafilm, we thank you. Have a great day.